Am I visible now?
You are.
Okay. I think no other option but to join.
That's okay.
We can begin now.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Navneeta ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you,
begin
sir.
now.
So are we having all our panelists in the platform? Are we having, sir, all the panelists in the platform? Rishikesh, sir, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. You can begin.
Yeah. Are we having all the participants in the platform, all the panelists?
Except Amitabh Kundu, sir, all others are there. We can begin.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. So, very good evening to one and all gathered here today. My profound regards to all the distinguished panel members who have taken their valuable time out from their busy schedule to join us today. Extending my deep-rooted gratitude to the management of Christ University for bringing this allied platform to exchange and mutualize ideas and opinions. On behalf of Christ University, School of Commerce, Finance and Accountancy, I, Dr. FCMA Navneeta Ghosh, taking the privilege to begin the session titled Decoding Union Budget 2025. India's first union budget was presented on 26th of November 1947 by Dadin Finance Minister R.K. Shanmugam Chetty. So standing at the crossroads of target Viksit Bharat 2047, climatic adversities, eco-geo and political diversities, the decoding of Union Budget 2025 is going to present to the audience not only an informative statistics, but would translate to intrinsic decomposition and decipherment of ideas and opinions. Judicious balance of national growth, opening avenues for investment and industrialization, then raising disposable income in the hands of the middle income group. Amidst challenges, AI thoughts, priority sector investment, including green investment, it's a mammoth task. So by virtue of decoding today, Union Budget 2025, this would definitely reveal the complexities, critics, and directives of Indian policymakers with much adequate simplicities to the audience. So today's decoding would be fructified by the presence of the galaxy of eminent speakers we have with us, whose introduction deserves a special mention. Our first speaker of the session, Dr. Amitabh Kundu. Sir has not joined us, so we are moving ahead towards the second speaker's introduction, Dr. Virendra Kumar Malhotra. Sir is a distinguished Indian economist and academician known for his contribution in economics and social science research. As the former member secretary of ICSSR, Sir played a crucial role in promoting and funding research across India. Previously, he was a professor in economics at Chaudhry Charan Singh University, holding key administrative positions and mentoring numerous scholars. His research spans governance, economic development, corporate governance, intellectual property rights, and foreign trade, with notable projects funded by UGC. An author of several research papers and book, Economics of Education. Sir was actively involved in prestigious academic bodies, including Indian Council of World Affairs and Court of Jawaharlal Nehru University. His leadership has significantly influenced social science research and policy development in India. Further, we have among us Dr. V.K. Vijay Kumar, our eminent panel member. Sir is the Chief Investment Strategist at Geojit Financial Service, providing expert analysis on capital markets, wealth management, and both Indian and global economies. A respected academician in capital markets. A respected academician in Kerala, Sir has authored 4 books on economics and presented numerous papers at national and international level seminars. Sir has regularly shared insights on market trends, investment strategies, in different platforms like GeoJet Insights and Economic Times. His extensive experience and scholarly contribution have established him as a trusted authority in investment strategy. The fourth panelist of the day, Dr. Sangeeta Dattagupta. Ma'am is a distinguished academician specialized in development economics, gender economics, financial economics, and entrepreneurship. She is currently serving as a professor at the School of Management, BML Munjal University. She completed her graduate, postgraduate, and PhD in economics from Jadavpur University with a specialization in econometrics. She has also chaired the Center for Research in various institutions. Her research work includes studies on technology adoption among rural women and IT profitability in the Indian banking sector. Ma'am is the recipient of the Presidential Best Paper Award at Basanna Conference in New York. She serves on the editorial review board for International Journal of Emerging Markets. Her work significantly contributed to gender inclusivity and technological adoption in rural settings. Without further ado, I would like to hand over the session. I think we have among us Amitav sir as well.
I just can't see my face. I mean, how do I show my...
Sir, you're visible.
I don't see myself. Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
As long as...
Okay, so you are actually our first panelist of the day. Without your presence, I couldn't take the chance of introducing yourself. So thank you so much for joining.
I could hear that. I could hear everything. Thank you.
Okay, so I would just quickly take a minute to introduce you, without which we cannot go forward. Thank you so much, sir. So our first speaker of the session, Dr. Amitav Kundu, sir, has joined right now. Sir is a distinguished Indian economist and social scientist known for his contribution to urban development, migration, and social equity. A former professor and dean at JNU, sir has served in key national and international roles, including as a member of National Statistical Commission, chair of the past Sachar Evaluation Committee, and regional advisor on poverty at UNESCWA. Sir has held visiting professorships at esteemed institutions such as University of Amsterdam and Sciences PO, and has authored almost around 35 books and 300 research articles. Currently, Sir is a distinguished fellow at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries, a professor emeritus at LG University, and a visiting professor at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Can you just tell me how can I see my photograph there? Because it's not on my screen. Is there something that I can do?
I do get the same problem. I can't see myself.
Rishikesh,
I don't see him also. I don't see him.
Is there any technical issues from that side?
Well, it's not that important though.
Professor,
I think we can
Professor
start.
Kundu, this is VK Malhotra. We can all see you very well.
I can see you. I can see everyone.
Right,
But I can't see myself.
And
That's
I
all.
can see
It has
myself
never-
also, and others too, other
Okay.
panelists too. So we can, I think,
Maybe there
we
is some
can
button
begin.
there is some button that I can click. No.
I do
Doesn't
not know
matter.
whether you may have stopped your own video in the beginning, I suppose.
I click.
No, that's gone. That's gone.
Okay.
It's not visible anymore.
Now is there?
No,
Your video
now
is
you
on
are
now.
visible.
Yeah.
You can see yourself.
Okay. No, I can't see myself. That's okay.
Okay.
Right. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege to be part of this very distinguished panel. I'll just give my first round of reaction. On the eve of the budget, I know all the development economists and the budget experts were preparing to discuss what would be the impact of the very significant budget, the next second term of the NDA government. People were trying to prepare, even the channel computers, on how the budget will impact on rural development, rural infrastructure, the overall deficit financing, sectoral issues, how it would attract the foreign direct investment, and all that. But, immediately after the budget was presented, the whole discussion was hijacked by chartered accountants. they were all looking at what would the impact of this slab changes and the 7 lakh to 12 lakh tax exemption. So the discussion really was, I was a bit disappointed, was not on the sectoral impact, developmental impact, but on the calculations of how much would be the saving of the middle class. Even it would be important to find out that if there is an immediate extra saving, what would be the expenditure pattern and how would it affect the sectoral economy? And that was too quick for us to speculate. But I personally believe that the budget was a reaction on the slowing down of the economic growth in India. The second quarter showed a significant fall in the growth rate, 3.5%. Everything was okay? Am I visible?
That was a minor interruption. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So as I was saying that it was some kind of a panic reaction. If you look at the economic survey, it spent quite a bit of time in explaining why Indian economic growth rate, which has suddenly fallen, is not a matter of concern. Look at the global economy, and the short-term fall was because of some delay in the public expenditure on postponement of demand in the urban sector by the consumers. So I think the government was seriously worried about it. And at the global level, there is a trend of premature deindustrialization. Many of the economies are getting trapped. Since the growth rate was falling in India, and even next year, the projection is even slightly less than 6.4%, which is the projection for this year. I think government was in a hurry to boost up the economic growth. And the first thing they thought was to give some money in the middle class so that the demand can be pushed. But I think it is important to find out that beside the impact, and I have absolute no doubt that the increased expenditure that will come from the middle class, if you call that middle class, which is really top 5 to 7% of the total working population. But certainly, I think it will give a boost to the industrial growth. But what kind of industries will come up? I think it's the consumer durables. Auto industry already shows some impact. Housing industry, tourism industry, and I don't think these are labor-intensive industry. Nobody, because of the income tax saving, would employ one more domestic help. They would go for tourism or perhaps invest in housing. Housing is another sector because people already, a section of the urban middle class have one house, so the second house would come in. So I would certainly think that this is a good move to boost the short-term economic growth. But what would be the impact on the capital expenditure pattern? Because there will be some less of revenue. What would be the impact on the sectoral allocation? I think health and education are two sectors where there has been some increase, but the issue is that even in health and education, you do find that expenditure pattern is at the higher level, technological level. You create IITs, you create, medical research facilities, but the last mile connectivity, which is a major issue in the rural areas and the small towns, there I think we needed some expenditure. And this reduction in the revenue, how would that impact on the sectoral pattern of capital expenditure is something which is a matter of concern. And I think the people who are concerned are working on it. But I certainly believe that this budget would immediately give an impact. Next 2 years, we'll see that. But we were expecting this NDA government to really push up the economic growth for the last 3-4 years. We have seen how the capital expenditure has given boost to the rural economy and also bridge the rural-urban gaps in infrastructure and other facilities. So I was a bit surprised that concern for boosting capital expenditure and long-term economic growth has been put somewhat in the back burner, and the basic thrust is on pushing up the current economic growth for the next couple of years. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable inputs. I would like to hand over the session to Dr. Virendra Kumar Malhotra to enlighten us with his views. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nabanita Ghosh. And my thanks go to Dr. K.B. Rishikesh also and Christ University for organizing this panel discussion on decoding budget 2025-26. There are certain concerns. In fact, I had an opportunity to be part of certain panels on pre-budget discussion and then the discussion pertaining to economic survey, and then this post-budget discussions also. There are certain common areas, and I would definitely, in my opinion, on certain aspects converges with the opinion of Professor Kundu. But there are certain aspects which definitely invite little more attention from my side. See, when this budget was going to be presented, all of us had few questions in our mind. Of course, growth rate is one of those concerns, since India has kept before itself a big target of seeing Viksit Bharat by 2047, and the roadmap to achieve that Viksit Bharat or to arrive at that Viksit Bharat is another idea which definitely has been part of attention of all of us, including the policy makers at the helm. Another interesting part is, as Professor Kundu tried to underline that also, somewhere decelerating growth was another issue which was there in our mind, that since we are talking about Viksit Bharat, we are thinking in terms of a potential growth rate ranging between 8 to 10% sometimes. But what exactly are we going to achieve given the global realities and the situations, and also the uncertainties, certain wars also at global level going on, and somewhere affecting the global demand, not only from one side, but from different corners of the world. That being another reality. Instability or stability in terms of inflation rate, or people were talking about targeted inflation rates also. The situation relating to the foreign trade was another concern. Unemployment rate could be another point of concern to the people, in fact. And very importantly, that if we intend to witness a Viksit Bharat by 2047, what kind of infrastructure shall we like to have, and where from the resources for that infrastructure would come? So these were the key issues in our mind. I think after a long period of time, I would like to combine two documents, one being budget and the other being economic survey this time, together. And I would like to analyze the facts before us, and maybe certain statements which have come from the government side or the policy makers, together to understand the things little more in a little more sharp way. In the sense, when I go through economic survey, the words that I would definitely appreciate coming from the policymakers themselves, talking about and very candidly accepting somewhere, perhaps the business growth in India, or the growth of, let's say, overall economic activities in the economy suffered because of somewhere over regulations. That's one point where I would like to definitely try to invest some time. So streamlining regulations, enhancing competitiveness, and encouraging innovations. So this became the guideline of economic survey, in fact, this time. And this definitely finds its expression or manifestations in the document called Budget Before Us. And when it talks about deregulation, it says deregulation with a focus on digitization, decriminalization, and disinvestment of the right unnecessary government functions. I would in place say unnecessary government economic activities. we have been talking for quite good time now about Viksit Bharat or developed India. Most of us were in fact looking at the developed India considering a certain income level, per capita GDP, to be very precise about, and talking in terms of seeing India as a developed nation, as if that per capita GDP level will itself take care of many things that we would like to have to be happening in the economy. But it's a good effort this time that at the time of presenting the budget before the whole nation, the finance minister has talked about what would be the guiding principles of our Viksit Bharat. She talked about eradicating poverty or zero poverty, providing high quality universal school education, affordable and comprehensive health care with the use of technology, achieving full employment with a skilled workforce. So there are two things: full employment, that's an idea, and secondly, achieving it with the help of the skilled manpower, involving 70% women in economic activities, and strengthening agriculture to make India the food basket of the world, and devoting or dedicating one chapter on how agriculture constitutes the sector of the future. And then pillars of the growth have also been somewhere. There is an effort to identify those pillars in terms of agriculture, MSME, investments in education and technology, exports, and very importantly, I think for last few years, we were talking about what people normally term as nuts and bolts reforms. But again, we are talking about structural reforms in this budget and economic survey both. I think there is a strong realization at the national level that we need to definitely move far ahead of or in terms of the reforms that we have had or we have witnessed thus far. If we really want to see India progressing by leaps and bounds, or maybe realizing its potentials of growth, at least I'm not disappointed to see that growth rate, which was for Viksit Bharat, which was being seen in terms of 8 to 10%, is moderated to around 6.5 to 6.4% somewhere. I wish that once we realize it for a few years, despite the global uncertainties that all of us are seeing and are there before us, I think the idea of India being a developed country has to be definitely visualized altogether differently. And this is what, and this is where the efforts are being made. A country just on the basis of per capita income having a lot of inequality, but suffering from serious problems in education, skill, and healthcare systems, perhaps will not be said to be moving towards the idea of Viksit Bharat in a very matured way. So I think dealing with these problems right in the beginning and then taking country forward as a steady rate of growth ranging between somewhere 6.5 to 8.5 in the long run, I think we can definitely, we are moving towards our own idea of, or our own model of developed India. And the way the different sectors, I think we have been talking about industry, but now MSME again comes into prominence. And there are several measures and schemes, the way those are being looked at, the way changes in those schemes are being considered and thought to be brought forward now, they would definitely. Secondly, as far as the employment is concerned, I think India is beginning to identify the industries of the future, which could be and which have to be labor intensive also, given the size of the population that we have. So tourism is one identified area. Housing is another important area, and there are significant amount of investments in housing being made. I'm very happy to see personally that on two fronts, because India becomes India, and India could become a developed nation only when there is a equal and very important involvement of all states also in this process of making it developed. And for that, uh, for assessment of ease of doing business, for assessment of investment friendliness at the state level, and also the business friendly environment of the states, I think new reforms, new initiatives, and new indices, they are under contemplation, and we would definitely soon have a chance to see that. I'm very happy to see that they are talking about another interesting, a committee to look at what kind of regulatory reforms shall we be needing in near future. And I'm sure, given this direction, which definitely keeps its eyes set on seeing India growing at potentially the best possible growth rate, and a little practical growth rate also, I would say. And we define our own principles of how we have to grow and where we have to grow. So right now, and at this stage, I'll stop at this point. Maybe when we proceed further, we would have still more chance to talk in detail about the things that have been discussed in the budget.
Thank you so much, sir, for once again having and giving us an opportunity to hear so many inputs. So now is the time to hand over the session to our third panelist of the day. I would like to invite Dr. V.K. Vijay Kumar to take over the session and enlighten us with his inputs. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Hope I am visible.
Yes, sir, you're visible. You're visible.
I can't see myself on the screen. The same problem which was faced by Professor Kundu. That's okay, so long as you can see me, that's fine.
You're
But
visible.
first of all, let me express my sincere gratitude for this opportunity to participate in this panel discussion on decoding the budget, along with the eminent panelists in this session. First, let me make this observation. A budget has to be assessed in the context in which it is presented. What is the macroeconomic context in which this budget is being presented? Has it succeeded, or does it attempt to address the macroeconomic challenges which the economy is facing now? Professor Kundu threw a lot of light on the growth slowdown which the economy is facing now. I broadly agree with him on that. And that is the reason why we see a change in the budget strategy. We know that the Indian economy staged a V-shaped recovery after the COVID contraction. In FY 2021, the GDP contracted by 5.1%. Thanks to the lockdown that we had. And that is one of the worst GDP contractions among the large economies of the world. But thanks to the public capex-driven growth strategy, which the government started implementing immediately, GDP registered a quick V-shaped recovery to 9.2% in financial year 21-22, which was followed by another 7% GDP growth the following year. And last year, FY 24, we were all a little bit surprised when the GDP clocked 8.2%. That was a little bit unexpected. But then in this financial year, as all of us are very familiar, the second quarter GDP unexpectedly slumped to 5.4%. And this year, the latest estimates put the GDP growth rate for FY 25 at 6.4%. That is a consensus estimate, 6.4%. So this is of course, 6.4%, as both my eminent panelists pointed out, is a decent growth, and that is the highest growth among the large economies of the world. So from that perspective, we are certainly doing well. But when we are decelerating from 7%, 8.2% to 6.4%, and with the kind of macro challenges that we face in the global context where there is a possibility of a trade war, God forbid, but you can't rule it out with a president like Donald Trump in the White House. Anything is possible. So there is a context of heightened global uncertainty. Even a global trade war is looming large. So in that context, we have to be very careful about reviving economic growth. And a major challenge that we are facing right now is that the policy that we followed during the last 4 years, the public capex-driven growth strategy, that has reached a stage of no returns, diminishing returns, because there are limits to how much you can grow just by government public capex driven growth. Because as we have seen this year, FY25, the public capex outlay was 11.11 trillion rupees. Good number to remember. 11.11 trillion was the outlay for public capex. But then the government could achieve only 10.18 trillion rupees. That is the expected public capex this financial year. Of course, it is relevant to know that a lot of public expenditure programs were constrained by the elections, the election-related restrictions on formulating new programs, getting it approved, and implementing those that run into rough weather because of the election-related restrictions. Also, it is being debated now whether we can sustain with this government capex-driven strategy, because unless the private investment also picks up, you cannot have a sustained GDP growth, because we have the simple equation which we teach in the macroeconomics classes, that GDP growth from the expenditure side is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So consumption has been a little bit tepid during the last 1 year, particularly urban consumption. Rural consumption is doing reasonably better thanks to the bumper Kharif crop that we had. And the Rabi crops also looks promising. Therefore, the strength in rural consumption can continue. But then unless private investment, the I part in C plus I plus G plus X minus M, unless the private investment picks up and sustains itself, it would be difficult to sustain the growth rate. So Malhotra was emphasizing the importance of sustaining a GDP growth, let us say in the range of 7.5%, for us to reach the aspirational goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047, reaching a per capita GDP level of $14,050. That is the definition of a developed country as per the World Bank definition of per capita income for developed countries. Reaching that level from the around $3,000 plus per capita income that we have now is a daunting task. So to achieve that coveted mark and to escape the possible middle income trap which we might face, it is important that private investment has to pick up and private investment has to sustain. The government cannot be doing the heavy lifting all the time, as it has been doing. And particularly, we have reached, as I said earlier, a stage of diminishing returns in capex, particularly on the capex in public expenditure was driven mainly by public capex in defense, in railways, in ports, roads. But these are reaching a stage of diminishing returns. So this has resulted in a change in the budget strategy. That's why the finance minister and the economic team, the economic survey also has been very, very loud on that particular point. We have to have consumption-driven growth. Only consumption-driven growth will be sustainable. That's why the finance minister announced the big bazooka in the budget. And as Professor Kundu rightly said, chartered accountants hijacked the discussion because that became the talking point. How much of this 1 lakh crore of personal income tax sacrifice, the personal income tax revenue sacrificed by the government, how much of that will be spent on consumption, how much will be saved? That is an area of uncertainty. We do not know. Broadly, we can say 80% can be spent, but that depends on the propensity to save and propensity to consume. People of my generation will be willing to save money, will be having more propensity to save, and high propensity to save is not good at this point of India's economic growth. But then we know the youngsters, younger generation are very good in spending money. Their propensity to consume is very high. So hopefully a major part of this 1 lakh crores sacrificed by the government through the income tax relief given to the middle class, that will come back into the market through increased demand for consumer goods. As Professor Kundu rightly remarked in his observations, a major part of the increased demand can be witnessed in consumer discretionary, not on food items, because when income tax payers get relief, that extra money that they save will not be spent on food because the food part is already taken care of for this segment of the population. And the money is unlikely to be spent on FMCG also. The money is unlikely to be spent on soaps, toothpaste, or shampoos, because these kinds of demand have already been met as far as the middle income are concerned. So there will be a big boost. A likely scenario is a big boost for consumer durables, particularly consumer durables, white goods like refrigerators, washing machines, air conditioners. Even now, only 13% of families in India have washing machines. Only 8% of the families, particularly in the rural areas, have air conditioners. Only 8% of the families have cars. So the demand for automobiles like cars, two-wheelers, motorcycles, scooters, and white goods will pick up. And this hopefully will result in increased private capital expenditure by entrepreneurs, businessmen in these segments. So in our advice to our investors also, we are advising them to look into these areas, consumer durables as a potential area of higher demand and therefore higher business profits going forward. These are my initial observations. I will come back with more inputs as the discussion goes forward.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing with us all the intrinsic and valuable inputs. I would like to now welcome to the platform Dr. Sangeeta Dattagupta. Ma'am, over to you. Kindly enlighten us with your perspectives on this.
Thank you, Dr. Nabanita Ghosh, and thanks to Christ University for inviting me. It's indeed a pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel. The 4 pillars of this year's budget, Yuva, Garib, Annadata, and Nadi. So being the only Nadi in the panel, so I thought I should focus on gender budgeting part of the budget. Well, I'm a gender economist, so I was interested to know about the allocation for gender budgeting. But as Professor Kundu rightly pointed out, the whole thing was hijacked by the whole new income tax slabs. I agree with all the panel members. I think the main reason behind the change in the slabs was to boost consumption and boost sagging economic growth. And I also feel it was to make the new tax regime more attractive, because people in higher income groups, they're still using the old tax regime. So that was one. But the main reason, of course, was to make to drive the consumption, because ours is a consumption-driven economy, and also to boost the growth. So it reflected the government's continued commitment to foster growth. But I was more interested to know about the gender budgeting part of the budget. Why I'll tell you, because that is also important, because I was just looking at the gender gap report, and I found that India's rank is 129 out of 146 countries. It is down from 127 in 2023. And as part of Viksit Bharat, Prime Minister Modi spoke about the female workforce participation going up to 70%, which is hovering around 14 now. But that is almost 20% less than the countries like USA and China. So if you really want to include women in the workforce, then the resource allocation to the various initiatives, it's very important. So if you look at it, apparently it is the total allocation has gone up, but sometimes only looking at the numbers may not give us the correct picture. So we want to have to go a little deep into it to understand that whether this gender budgeting of this year, whether it will actually lead us to the transformative change that we are looking for, or the empowerment that we are looking for, or it's will merely these are numbers which will not actually help us to achieve what we want to achieve. So before I start decoding this year's budget, a little bit about that whole gender budgeting history of India in the sense, and also globally, I would like to touch upon. Because 1970s was when we were, discussing about women in development, basically looking at development, bringing in the gender lens to the whole development discourse. So women in development, how women can contribute productively to development. Then 80s, we took a more holistic approach of gender in development. And in 1995, with the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, so gender mainstreaming became a strategic option, strategic initiative rather, for or approach for most of the countries. India started its gender budgeting in the year 2005-06, so it's 20th year of gender budgeting for India. In fact, it all if you look at India's commitment to gender equality, it started with the ratification of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1993, and it kind of paved the way for gender budgeting in 2005-06. So 20 years of gender budgeting, and we have to look at where are we, and after that also our rank is 129 out of 146 countries. So we really have to look at our policies, and also look at the implementation of the policies. That is very, very important. Have we done the implementations correctly or not? Now, if you look at this year's budget, the increase is from 4.49 lakh crore to 4.49 lakh crore from 3.27 lakh crore last year. So that's quite impressive, because it is now 8.86% compared to 6.8% last year. So if you look at the number, that is quite impressive. This is the biggest gender budget till date, and that is also that is commendable, because government has considered it's an important aspect, and it has shown it is the biggest till date. And 49 ministries or departments, they have reported gender budgeting compared to 38 last year. So that means overall, if you look at it, that's if you look at this, that means it's actually a step in the right direction. But what we need to do, we need to go a little deep down into understand that whether all the steps taken, they are in the right direction or not. Now, some of the, before I move forward, some of the ministries which have done quite well in terms of more than 30% allocation to gender budgeting include Ministry of Women and Child Development, Department of Rural Development, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Law and Renewable Energy, Department of Health and Family Welfare. So these are the departments which have more than 30% allocation to gender budgeting. Now, I was looking at some of the budget figures to understand that where are we in terms of it. One is that this term loan of 2 crore for the first time entrepreneurs, including women, that is a commendable step. I work extensively with women micro entrepreneurs, especially in the rural areas. And I know that rural entrepreneurship for rural women can actually go a long way for gender parity, because I've seen women, taking steps against abusive alcoholic husband. So these are the steps taken by them if they become empowered through entrepreneurship. This is something which I've observed over the years. This Prime Minister Employment Generation Scheme, which is quite baffling to me. The focus is on youth, women, but this has, the allocation to this particular scheme has decreased from around 1,000 crore to around 862 crore in this year's budget, which is quite baffling, because this was for the generation of employment and generation of and for entrepreneurship generation. If you look at the Prime Minister Awas Yojana, again, that is under Part A. Now, what is Part A, Part B of Part C? Part A is that 100% to women-specific schemes. Part B is 30 to 90%, 99% to women-specific schemes. And Part C is less than 30% to women-specific schemes. Now, if you look at the Prime Minister Awas Yojana, it is under Part A, but the concern is that only 73% of the women have registered for homes under Prime Minister Awas Yojana in the rural areas. That means even if it's 100, it is in Part A, probably it will not serve the purpose. If for the Manrega, of course, the gender budget part of Manrega has gone up, but it's still reflected right now in 33% of the gender budget, and it will be 45% next year. The agricultural scheme called Krishi Unnati, there has been an increase in allocation, but it is in the Part B of gender budgeting. Now, Part B of gender budgeting is not 100% allocation. And another area of concern is that there is no special provision for women farmers. Many a times, if you look at the unpaid care work, it is almost 3 times for women compared to men, based on the time use survey of 2019. And in the agriculture sector, the effort that they put in, many a times it is considered an extension of the household work they are doing. So it was important that some provisions are made for women farmers, which was not the case this year. This is again an area of concern. Another area is that although it is Part A, which is a national mission on education through ICT, that is to, because there is a gender divide, gender digital divide, which has to be addressed. But again, it was found out that the allocation has come down, although it is in Part A, that means 100% allocation for women-specific schemes, but the allocation to this particular sector has come down. There are many such things which probably we can discuss later when I was looking through the budget. For Ayushman Bharat, the allocation has gone up. Again, it is in Part B of gender budgeting scheme. Very weird is the menstrual hygiene scheme, which is specific to women. That has also been put in the Part B of the gender budgeting. So these are the various, areas of concern. Although the total allocation has gone up, the question is whether it has gone in the right direction or not, whether the areas which required special attention, whether special attention has been given to those areas or not. That is something we need to look at. And maybe it will, in a year's time, probably we'll get to know whether this enhanced gender budgeting has actually helped or not. The Nirbhaya fund, that has seen some increase, but 74% of that fund is still unspent. So, the safety issue is a major problem, but how 74% of that fund is still unspent, that is something we need to ponder on. So I will stop here. There are other issues in this gender budgeting which I can discuss going forward. I'll stop here and I'll hand it over to Dr. Nabanita.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We were all listening about your pointers that you have generated towards this gender issues. So with this, we have ended our round one. All the respective panelists have shared their views and perspective at a generic level, or how things are being, which is called decoding of budget, Union Budget 2025. I would like to go back to Dr. Amitav Kundu. Sir, I would like you to, enlighten us on the topic. This is what the understanding from my side goes with a little bit of knowledge in whatever I gathered. That this budget is specifically catering to the middle class segment, and who are being given a lot of benefit towards in terms of tax proposition. That is absolutely correct, and therefore given a chance to the chartered accountants to hijack the discussion. So it's an expectation always from the citizens that we can have a holistic budget, but it's really a dream to have a holistic budget. Can you share or enlighten us that what could have been the measures, at least in this budget, would have taken by our Prime Minister or Finance Minister would have given an idea about it? Like what could have made this budget little more holistic? Like it has become one centric approach, and things are not being given or prioritized when we are looking at the lower income group or other even are below that levels. So as a professor and in as an economist, I would like you to opine on this, like how we could have made this budget a little more better holistic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Navanita. I think it's a very important point that we ought to really have a holistic approach. And as Professor Santosh Malhotra mentioned, that Viksit Bharat does not mean only moving from $2,500 per capita to $14,000. That's just one dimension. The life expectancy at the moment is 69. It has to go up to 75. Your expected years of schooling, which is just 7 years, has to go up to 15 years. That's by the current level. Our sustainable energy, solar energy is much less than 20%. It has to go up. Now, that is the vision of Viksit Bharat. And is it possible that we achieve there? We go there, reach there. Now, there is a study by Asian Development Bank, Asia 2030 and 2050. This is not by, any Minister of External Affairs or Minister of Finance in India. But that report says that is very much possible that India would be able to reach that. In fact, in the preface itself, it says 21st century belongs to Asia, 21st century belongs to India because of the structural parameters. But it is not mandatory. It requires certain kind of a specific, direction. And Navarita, you're right that your budget should give that direction in terms of sectoral allocation. The most important point that ADB mentions, that in order to reach that target that India has set, the inequality has to be brought down. And we have one of the sharpest inequality even among the less developed countries, particularly in access to education and access to basic amenities. So that is what I was saying, that as far as the present budget is concerned, it should have really given more thrust on the provision and delivery of the basic services, education, health, and the basic amenities, water supply, sewerage, sanitation, to the poorer sections of the population. And that targeting required certain kind of a redesigning of the allocation and the schemes that was somehow missing. The second important point that strikes me is the point that Mr. Vijay Kumar was also mentioning, is likely to increase inequality, inflation. Because taxpayers in this country, the total who come under the net would be 17% of the total workforce. Out of that, people are exempt, so only 12% pay some taxes. And those who have 1 lakh income per month, that is 12 lakhs who are exempt, 12,75,000, that constitutes only 1% of the taxpayers. Now you suddenly give purchasing power in their hands. The kind of expenditure they will incur in would be consumer durables. Already the real estate has started showing, because the housing investment, many urban dwellers, middle class, have one house. They might have a second house. That's already that in urban areas, 10 million houses are vacant. That's the recent statistics. So, and also the mobile or automobile industry has reacted positively. That's why the expenditure will come up. So I'm just wondering whether this boost to the growth, which is coming through the middle class consumer expenditure, would create decent employment for the poorer sections of the population. I'm saying India doesn't have a problem of unemployment. Unemployment is not there, but employment at a very low level of productivity, household-based, unpaid family labor constitutes a major part. So I was therefore wondering that if they do not get employment and get a higher increase, they will be affected by inflation. Inflation will go up because the consumer, middle class is spending money. Prices will go up. But then the section which are not being benefited would be hit by the inflation, and that is one area of concern. In fact, GST is more equalizing because everybody has to pay it. If you bring down GST, then to an extent it benefits go to the poorer sections, but reducing income tax for the top 5% certainly can increase inflation. So that is one concern that has to be brought in. The third point that strikes me, if you look at the distribution of the population, spatial distribution of the people who are getting this 1 lakh plus per month. Do you believe I did a calculation? About 55% of these people who are getting the major benefit of the tax concession are in million plus cities. There are 60, 70 million plus cities now. So believe me, about 55% of these people, the income generation will take place in the million plus cities. Another 30%, 32% would be, in the other class 1 and other towns, and rural areas will have something like 12, 15%. So basically, there will be regional inequality. Large cities will have a large amount of purchasing power coming in the market. So that is another concern that I had, that infrastructural development in the rural areas and small and medium towns, that could have been addressed. One thing that is very important in the budget, not many people have mentioned it. Do you know, in the urban areas, if you have 2 houses, one house can be self-occupied, and the second house, if you have given on rent, you have to pay taxes. Even if you have not given on rent, you have to pay taxes. But the present budget has said you can have 2 houses, and both of them can be declared as self-occupied. Basically because, large number of urban middle class already had a second house, keeping for the children when they'll go up. So that exemption has been given. So I have a feeling that the extra purchasing power may go into, the house construction, which is not really immediately put in use. I would think that the social rate of return of that kind of a housing would be less. And the final point that strikes me is important, that there has been significant improvement in the rural economy because of the infrastructural investment that has come in the last 2-3 years, and that has to some extent brought down rural-urban inequality. But look at the food production this year. It is record high. But at the same time, you have food inflation. Food inflation last quarter was about something like 8%, much higher than the general CPI, Consumer Price Index, which is about 6%, which has now gone down. But nonetheless, food prices was higher, despite the infrastructural investment, despite the fact that food production has been high. That means if the terms of trade has shifted in favor of agriculture, we would expect that the farmers would benefit. The poor farmers, are they benefiting? This agricultural growth and the increase in the food prices, is it helping the rural poor? Look at the real wage rate. In the last 7 years, rural wages have not gone up. And that is something, in fact, has slightly gone down. For the self-employed, it has gone down. So while I appreciate that rural infrastructural investment has helped agricultural growth. Even in COVID year, agriculture did remarkably well. And after that also agriculture is doing reasonably well. But the benefits are not really reaching the poorer sections of the farmers, and the rural wages and self-employed real wages in rural, even in the urban areas, have not gone up. So, Navnita, your specific question, I would think that there has to be more targeting in the benefit programs, and cooperatives should be brought in a major way in order to ensure that the benefits of agricultural development go to the poorer sections of the population. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So, sir has given a broad picture as towards the classification and reclassification, what has been proposed in the budget. So, I would like to ask Dr. Malhotra, as one of my question, I was just looking through. If we are taking a look at the world ranking, as of US is at USD trillion 30.34, China somewhere close to 20, Germany and Japan, which recently interchanged their position, Japan around close to 4.92 in terms of real GDP, and Germany 4.92, Japan around 4.39, and India is standing at 4.27. So as a Vikshit Bharat, this tagline goes, and we are talking about Indianization, and we are planning towards 5 trillion Indian economy. We could reach, but the concern remains just after the budget, the critics that came up to the platform, what I just could hear from few of it. Like, if at all the growth rate is not adequately proportionated and continued at the rate of 8% and above for a continuous period of 15 to 20 years, because standing at 2025, moving towards 2047, and realizing the dreams of Vikshit Bharat within next 22 to 23 years, without having the growth rate continuously at a level of 8% or above that. Because at this current stage, looking at the budget and the budgetary proposition, if actualized, then it is going to be around 6 odd growth rate. How is it possible that we would be able to achieve that Vikshit Bharat 2047? I would like to have some inputs from Dr. Malhotra. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nobnita, for asking me this question. In fact, this issue has been addressed by many people who have tried to give their own models of Viksit Bharat or developed India. Of course, as I said in my initial remarks, and we had a reflection from Professor Kundu also on that there are few things which have to be understood very, very well. There is a strong realization in the economy that perhaps India has more potentials in terms of growth rate than the growth rate that we are achieving over a very long period of time. Now, this time period could be 70 years or 75 years, in fact. For a long period of time, we were trying to say that India did not move as far as long run growth rates are concerned. India did not cross the barrier of 3.5%. Then we crossed that barrier, arrived at a stage of 5%. And then perhaps we have been in a time that we are somewhere stuck between 6 and 7.5%. And this is how, depending upon our own internal situation and the global situation, sometimes it appears to us that we are going to soon achieve 6.5% or 7%, or maybe 7.2%, somewhere around that. So on a very optimistic note right now, it appears to us that we could achieve 7 to 7.2%. On slightly pessimistic note, it might appear to us that, okay, we are going below 6.5 and we might achieve 6.3 to 6.4. Whereas conversion of India or translating India from developing economy or emerging economy right now to a developed economy, we would like to have a growth rate, and we would need to have a growth rate ranging between 8 to somewhere 9.5%, and different models. They talk about what would happen if India on a or over a long run achieves 9 to 10% growth rate, and then 8% growth rate, 7% growth rate, or 6.5%. Point is, Navnita, see, merely describing developed country or developed India in terms of GDP growth rate and per capita incomes is not going to solve the objective. Why I'm saying so? Maybe on an average, we are by 2047, we are in a position to achieve that per capita GDP rate also. But the issue is that given the fact that inequalities continue to increase, the kind of human capital, because when we consider, let's say, the finance or the physical capital, we must at the same time concentrate on the human capital also and the quality of human capital. I would say that we cannot live in many types of India at the same time. One being developed or advanced, the other being developing, and the third being very less developed. The point is, we all understand our own idea of what we consider as advancement or development has to be definitely very clearly defined. And this is why I said that it is for the first time I'm seeing that there is a concentration on poverty, talking about high quality education, talking about skills, talking about healthcare, which all account for, or full employment shall remain an objective. All of us understand that when we say full employment, what exactly does it mean? And it would definitely be subject to several type of cycles in an economic life of a country. And what kind of skills do we mean? The basic idea is that if this country has to become an advanced economy and has to be part of that bracket, how to go forward from this point onwards? As I said, there are sectors which are crucial to India becoming Viksit. And we are coming back to the strength of those sectors. We all understand right now in the middle of a problem, as Professor Kundu very rightly said, that middle class wanted some more disposable income because there were certain reports which came and which came in media also, that people in middle class, they compared to the previous years, the growth of their disposable income is lesser than what we were expecting it to be, and that is having an impact on the overall size of the economic activities, and especially in the consumer goods industry in the country. That is why, we thought that we should have our own idea and where from India would become, or the entire India can be relatively made more advanced. So it is not without agriculture. It is not without MSMEs in our being in our focus, and it is not without human capital. And human capital in this country would come from investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. And infrastructure at all levels. In fact, we have started with certain kinds of infrastructure right now, and all this has to happen with a deep support of technology in different spheres of life. And at places it is happening, and at places, because of certain reasons and because of certain roadblocks, it doesn't appear to be happening. I would add one more important dimension to that despite the fact there is too much onus on the public expenditure. Some panelists have already made a mention about that. Dr. Vijay Kumar was making some mention like that. See, the sectors in which we have our own deep interest, we might think that this sector is more important than the remaining sectors. And so happens with the policymakers in the country also. And they bank upon the reports from different corners, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, different agencies which are into this business, they listen to their reports also, and then they do their homework also on that. One thing where I feel the document called Economic Survey talks about, and there is some idea also. I think perhaps we are talking about certain things. If we want to really see certain things happening in this country, despite the fact we have been making good investments through public expenditure, but productivity of those expenditure has definitely, from this point onwards, has to be assessed in a very objective manner. I think this is where the catch lies. Because if we talk of education or healthcare or even research expenditure, we know it for definite that if this country has to move towards being developed or advanced, the delivery of the public expenditure has to improve quite a lot. And there has to be an objective assessment or evaluation mechanism of those things. And whether we talk in terms of infrastructure or public expenditure on infrastructure, there are a lot many areas where investments are being made. But again, finally, it has to have, I know from my own experience of food security, how much money is being spent and the kind of delivery it should definitely make to the bottommost layers of the population, not only in terms of food security, but more than that, the nutritional security. I think I am adding one more dimension to that, because physical capital and human capital for nations' development, they have to move together. And this is where everything has to, it's good that after a long time, we have a strong realization that public sector cannot take care of every need of the economy. Private sector at every place. I mean, it's not the government which has to take the entire onus. Each one of us in the economy, if we want really in the country to reach our expected aspirational level, we must definitely, all of us have to take little onus. And this is where investments from private sector, I'm happy to see that government has allocated certain funds where private sector will take the lead as far as researches and innovations go in the country. We are talking about taking broadband to the remotest part of the country in each and every school, public school, in fact, or public funded school. We are talking about increasing the number of Atal tinkering lab from 10,000 to 50,000. It's a good move by the government that number of doctors to be created in the country is again being realized to be greater than what we have at the moment. And so is the case with the strength of the premier technology institutes of the country. So I think that there are certain realizations, as I said in the beginning itself, that government is understanding the system of regulation, and it finds its expression in Vikas se Vishwas. So this trusting your own people, and this is why there is a focus on decriminalization also. But more than that, this trusting private parties and their role in the development of the economy. But again, our yardsticks to evaluate the two in terms of productivity, they have also to be on a comparable footing, which perhaps we are missing thus far. I think that the time has come. Professor Kundu made a mention about ADB, and I remember whenever they would visit India, they will talk to us and they will talk about this, that what are you doing to improve the public delivery system? So, I mean, I think given these things, all these targets, they are achievable, but we'll have to definitely go through different phases. And finally, compounding will definitely play its own role as far as the economic modelings are concerned. So with this, I say, I mean, this is how I think about all these things.
Thank you, sir. I would like to pick a key word from your speech. One is awareness, which I personally liked it because government is having too much of onus on them that they have to do it. But again, 1.45 or 1.42 billion the population, and we are very proud that we are the largest population holder, and therefore first and the foremost important part is awareness. With awareness everything can be done, and without awareness it is very difficult. So in continuation with this, I would like to hear from Dr. Vijay Kumar on a particular question which was going on in my mind. So as so Malhotra sir has correctly pointed out, we are also becoming exclusively, rather to say, over dependent on this expenditure part of the public, making disposable income in the hands of the few. Again, I would like to quote the word few. I don't know if I'm correct or not. And then again, this saved 1 lakh would be either mutually proportionately saved or invested. But this is going to boost to the growth and the development of the nation. To what extent? There comes a question. But if at all we take the matter of awareness into consideration, are we not going to become little more sound and effective if we make literally heavy investment? I would like to say heavy investment in terms of education, in educating the mass of the society or the population of India, also to make them aware that how to channelize the investment. Having money in the hands necessarily doesn't lead to the productivity of the investment, and therefore the expenditure could be futile as well. And should it not come from the sound and effective investment made by the government in the education, so that people can be little more literate uh, in terms of making their utilization of funds? I would like to hear from Dr. Vijay Kumar. Over to you, sir.
Well, I share your concern regarding the inclusivity of growth. Economists seldom agree on issues, but then there are some issues on which there is a consensus. For instance, I don't see there is any dispute regarding the need to spend more money on social infrastructure and physical infrastructure. Both have to go together. And we need to spend more money on education and health. Again, there is no dispute regarding that. But then we have to be aware of the resource constraints also. The budget is only a short-term fiscal policy. Now, we are not using this budget as a long-term fiscal policy which will catapult India's GDP growth to, let us say, 8% within the next 2 years. That would be difficult, particularly in the present global context of deglobalization. Deglobalization is gaining momentum, and in the context of a potential trade war, then it is quite possible that we may be stuck in the 6.5 to 7% GDP growth for a couple of years. Now, exports are very crucial. We did achieve above 8% growth. We know that during the period 2003 to 2007. That was the stage when global growth was very impressive, above 4.5%. Global GDP was growing at more than 4.5%, and India's exports were growing at more than 20% every year. So when you have exports growing at more than 20% every year, it is quite possible that we can clock a GDP growth of more than 7%. 8% was what we clocked between 2003 and 2007. So that requires a favorable global macroeconomic construct, which is lacking presently. I agree that we should not be, too much bothered about the short-term constraints and should be looking at the long-term growth trajectory. But then it is important that we need both fiscal stimulus as well as monetary stimulus. That is why the RBI cut the repo rate, policy rates by 25 basis points yesterday. And I have a slightly different take on the possibility of inflation being triggered by this big bazooka announced on income tax cuts. The reason is, I will explain it like this. December inflation, I'm talking about CPI inflation, came at 5.22%. But then CPI inflation touched 5.22%. It will be lower in the coming months. 5.2% mainly because of food inflation, which clocked the 8.39%. There was the food inflation in December, 8.39%. But what is more important from the monetary policy angle is the core inflation. And core inflation is only 3.6%. Thanks to Chinese dumping, there is a positive side to that. Metal prices are low because China is having a lot of excess capacity in metals, and they are dumping it in most parts of the world. The positive side of that is that many other products like these, the prices are stable. So 3.6% core inflation is the inflation which RBI considers very, very seriously. And that was why our RBI chief, Malhotra, yesterday remarked that the present trend and also the budget is unlikely to be inflationary. And he went all the way in favor of a 25 basis point rate cut. The Monetary Policy Committee was unanimous in cutting policy rates by 25 basis points. It's a unanimous decision. So there is no need to worry too much about inflation in the short run. It is very much within the tolerance band of the RBI, and with the bumper kharif crops that we had and the good rabi crops also, food inflation is likely to behave in the coming months and also for FY26. And that has given the room for the Monetary Policy Committee to provide the monetary stimulus through the 25 basis point rate cut. And another point that we have to seriously discuss is this monetary stimulus has been made possible through fiscal consolidation. A great achievement of this government is in its success in sticking to the fiscal glide path. We know that due to the COVID and the big responsibility which was bestowed upon the government because of the lockdowns and all that, fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP touched 9.2% in FY21, 2021, the COVID year. Fiscal deficit shot up to 9.2%. And the government came up with a fiscal consolidation glide path, and the government has been sticking to that. And because of this fiscal prudence of sticking to the fiscal deficit target year after year, from 9.8%, we brought it down 9.2%, all the way to 4.8% in FY25. And for FY26, the target is 4.4%. And it is this fiscal prudence that has enabled the RBI to cut the policy rates and provide the monetary stimulus to complement the fiscal stimulus. So I would look at this budget as a short-term measure. In the long run, yes, of course, there is no disagreement regarding the need to push the growth rate to above 8%. It would be tough during a period of heightened global uncertainty like this. And when deglobalization is gathering momentum, thanks to President Trump, it would be a tough task to immediately move to 8% growth. But the right kind of reforms, in labor, and whenever some very serious reforms are recommended by the government, we have also loud noises like "Soot Boot Ki Sarkar," and that will always constrain the government in implementing bold reforms. But then the Delhi elections, I would say, is from the political angle a morale booster for the ruling dispensation, which might empower them to bring forward some very serious reforms, not only in the labor market, but also in meeting many of our infrastructure goals. So yes, we need to focus on education, health, physical infrastructure. All this have to go together. But in the short run, when we are discussing a budget, we are discussing a short-term fiscal policy. And it is important to understand that there are resource constraints. Sangeeta ma'am was very much concerned about the need for inclusive growth. All of us want inclusive growth. There can't be two views regarding that. And there are some measures, initiatives in the budget also. For instance, the finance minister spoke about the need to make India a hub for leather exports. Leather, we know, is a highly labor-intensive activity, leather as well as textiles. And with President Trump imposing tariffs on Chinese imports, and China plus one policy is opening out opportunities for India in these areas. That's a very nice move to think about making India a hub for leather imports and other labor-intensive activities which can create jobs for our people. So the biggest challenge is to create jobs. And for creating jobs, we need more labor-intensive sectoral allocation also. All cannot be done within a single budget. It has to be a medium-term policy. Because as I said, there are resource constraints. Unless you go along the path of fiscal consolidation, well, the government will not be having the resources to implement these things within a relatively short period of time. Over to you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your views. As I would like to know right now with regard to two questions which are going on in my mind. Sangeeta ma'am, I would like to know from you. So you have given a very vivid, rather to say descriptives or a complete understanding about this gender gap, gender sensitization as of the budget has concerned. So there are a lot of moves that the current budget has taken with regard to this gender matter. But do you feel, being a female gender, or even I'm also standing here, do you feel really proud about it when you pay more income tax, or you would like to get a benefit as a women income taxpayer? Because there is a very ambitious target in the budget to take almost 70% of the women into the workforce or task force or labor force. Now, is it really possible without giving any special offer to these tax slabs to the women? Or according to you and your opinion, if you can share with us, like whether it is possible without that kind of specification in the slabs, or your opinion says that it should not be given. Women are self-motivated to come to the workforce, and we are also proud, in paying that. Yes, I can take my collar off and say that, yes, I'm a income taxpayer, and I take really pride in telling that. What do you want to share with us, Sangeeta ma'am? Over to you.
Thank you for asking this question. I think I've been asked this question many times, that what do you feel? I feel, it is basically empowering women, but not, if I'm told that you've got this job because you're a woman, because of the diversity policy, then I'll feel bad. I will think that I've got it because I deserve to be here. So same for me is that if I'm earning, and if I'm earning as much as man, I don't mind paying the same tax. My concern is something else, is that if you have to go to the rural areas to understand their condition. So what we need to do, basically, I think all the panel members, esteemed panel members, they're unanimous that we need investment in education, we need investment in health, and we need investment in social and physical infrastructure. And what basically the point that I've always made, I'm making here also, is that let us give them the opportunities, let us empower them, so that they are at par with anyone else. And when they are working, and if they're getting a salary of more than 12, and they have to pay taxes, they should pay. It should not be the case that because I'm a woman, I should be paying less taxes. But I should be given all the opportunities to reach a position where I'm able to do a job and earn that this much. This is one. What Because many a times when we look at urban women and we feel that okay, we are doing so well, but because I work in the rural areas, I find that investment in education, health, these are the things which are still lacking. And if they're given the right kind of opportunities, they also can do very well in life. And we also know that uh, this unpaid care work, that if you consider that, or the work that is not considered part of GDP, if that is taken into consideration, that will actually, that is integrated in the labor statistics, that will actually enhance. So these are the things that we have to take into consideration. So I have answered your first question. I think you have another question in mind, Dr. Navanita. Please ask that question.
Yes, ma'am. So this is one part of it. And with regard to the care economy, so if these particular care economy has to be taken into consideration, so do you feel that some special arrangements should be done as an initiative from the government side so that it can bring in more productivity as of the women workforce is concerned? Because there are certain challenges and there are certain issues which we sometimes call it as glass ceiling, and it is different and it is difficult to break as well. So do you feel that certain special infrastructure oriented investment, and there should be a complete mindset and thought process to be given in revamping the entire setup for making the women workforce to work with proper productivity, as in different phases they need to take a lot of challenges and need to come
Absolutely,
forward with
absolutely.
it?
I totally agree with you. And as I mentioned, the time use survey that India conducted in 2019. So on an average, women spend 6.5 hours compared to 2.5 hours for men. So if you take that out, if they can, that if not, we all have to do it. Even if we take out 2-3 hours, and that can be productively used, it will only add to the GDP, right? India, because the life expectancy is increasing, aging population, so the care work is going to increase only. So the investment in social infrastructure is extremely important, so that they can be relieved of some work, and that the number of hours that they are spending on care, unpaid care work, that can be productively used. So that is why investment in infrastructure, social infrastructure, is very, very important moving forward. And also what is important, is just the because last time survey was in 2019, is that you need to collect data. That is very important for any informed policy decision. You have to collect data, understand what are the challenges, and where we can address those challenges, how we can address those challenges, and where are those challenges. So collection of data is extremely important. Gender audit is extremely important, periodic gender audit, and maybe gender budgeting act as recommended by Niti Aayog, we should go for that. So these are the things we can do going forward to I focused on one part of the budget because I thought, because that's very close to my heart. But I think if we invest, even if we take it a holistic view, and the investment is on education, if you talk on education, on health, because the health infrastructure is very bad, not just for women, for the rural people in general. So if you invest, and I think all the panel members are of the opinion that these are the things, if you really looking at Viksit Bharat 2047, it's not about per capita income, it's not about the economic growth, is about the inclusive growth that we are talking about. So if you are talking about Viksit Bharat, then you have to take us along with us every section of the society. And I'm very happy about a couple of things in this budget, is that focus on the tribal, focus on disabled, and also on gig workers. So these are some of the focus areas which they have started. I think they need to continue with that. Of course, it cannot be done in a couple of years, but hopefully if the government continues with this going forward, and that can actually, the true Viksit Bharat that we are talking about may happen by 2047.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So at the end of the second round, we all are unanimously rather hopeful that we would be able to see something in 2047 Viksit Bharat. So Looking at the stand, we will have one more quick round, and I would like to, go once again to our first speaker, the first panelist of the session, Dr. Amitav Kundu. Sir, I have a question for you. As of the India and Indian setup is concerned, the two major resources that we have in a country for a country to, show the perspectives of growth, one is agriculture, that is the greenery, the beautiful and bountiful nature that India is gifted with. And the second is the workforce. Now, I just want to ask this question, might be right or might not be very much related with the decoding of Union Budget 2025. Now, if we are channelizing the right investment and thereby India being a primarily an agricultural country and thereby we can make the right education given to the farmers and the community, we can definitely improve that particular part. And even the youth also can be scaled up or skilled up. Now, recently, the talks which are on as of more work, more productivity. Infosys chairperson has said. Then we heard also from L&T, 90 hours, 70 hours with upscaling, or I don't know whether this is upscaling or downscaling or upskilling. What is your opinion, sir? How can we be economy friendly, health friendly, and take the country towards 2047 Viksit Bharat? Share, please, your opinion regarding this. Over to you, sir.
Navanita, Lord Keynes had predicted in 1930 that my grandchildren will work only for 12 hours in a week. In a week, because of the technological advancement, and you don't need to, so much of this time will be spent on self-development and creation. Now, Keynes was proved to be wrong. There was a group of Nobel laureates, 16, 17 Nobel laureates. They worked together to say, why is it that the global data show that the hours of work has not gone down? It has remained more or less constant over a period of about 80, 90 years. So I'm surprised that people are talking about increasing the number of hours of work. What we really need to do is skill development. I talked about the Asian Development Report. That report clearly says that it is feasible that India reaches that target, and 21st century belongs to it, provided we reduce the inequality and we deal skill development. And that, I think, is extremely important. And with skill development, I think with AI coming in, it's becoming part of life. In fact, the other day, one of the artificial intelligence leaders said that, I'm sorry to say that my children, even with 30 years of education, will not be as informed, as smart as AI, So basically, we have to use that AI, and hours of work certainly would not be a matter of discussion. It's skill development, and skill development for women. I think that's extremely important. My study on discrimination in India shows that the discrimination against women in the labor market is extremely high. And the labor market discrimination does not come because only they're rejected by the employers, but within the household, their societal pressures are there. Women don't work. And that also is a part of the discrimination calculation because of the societal reasons, they don't go to labor market. So I personally believe that this inequality in skill development between men and women, SC, ST population, religious minorities, and the rest of the population, that inequality needs to be reduced. Just one small point I wanted to mention. RBI did not reduce the rate of interest for a long, long time because of the fear of inflation, right? And suddenly, it's a panic reaction of the country that, rate of growth has gone down. I hope we don't get into structural backwardness, premature deindustrialization, so we have to push up. So we have done, on the one hand, great boost to the consumer demand, particularly in the large cities and, middle class. On the other hand, we are also reducing this. Whether it would actually increase inflation or not will depend on where the money will be spent. It is unlikely they will be spent in those industries which are labor intensive. That's my assessment, but it certainly depends on how it would be spent. It would be, if it is spent on consumer durables, is likely to push up the growth rate. But employment generation, if that does not take place, decent employment generation, I'm taking unemployment rate is low, but decent employment is not there. Unless their income increases, their purchasing power will be less, and they'll be hit by certainly price rise. That's my consideration, but certainly it will depend on the nature of expenditure that this middle class will incur. Thank you, Navanita.
Thank you, sir. So I just want to hear from Malhotra, sir, that just after the budget, I was just listening to one of the speech from our former finance minister, P. Chidambaram, was being asked in a session that had you been there instead of Nirmala Sitharaman, who has presented the budget 2025, which we have gathered here for decoding. So what, sir, you would have done? So Chidambaram, sir, pointed out the things. The first one, I could have done the GST cut, and I could have done and taken care of the fuel, because these are the two much needed things where people are continuously going to have a hit. So that's absolutely agreed and said, and we also will unanimously agree. So, as an academician, if I say that you are a part of the budget ceremony, and I want to know your opinion, apart from this too, what could have strengthened the market liquidity? Or do you feel with this increased expenditure, it's going to generate a lot of liquidity in the market? Is there any possibility that, say, around in the month of April end or May, the home loan rate, the interest rate is going to come down, or it's going to be stagnated? Just want to have your opinion and views on this market liquidity and future reactions to that. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Nobnita, in fact, your question has got three parts. One is what P. Chidambaram said, in fact, as his reaction to the budget. There is no doubt that we are coming at a stage, because I read the initial draft also, that what were our expectations from the GST when it was initiated in this country. We were thinking that in some course of time, 1.125 lakh crore would be mobilized through GST, and we have definitely surpassed those expectations much beyond, and we have gone much beyond that. So we are coming around 1.80 lakh crore in terms of realization, and I'm very sure with economy becoming more transparent and with more transactions, economic transactions being put on record, in fact, there would be still stronger realizations as a result of GST. That's one thing. But there is no doubt, and there is no denial to this further expectation that when people have responded well, it would definitely need a reassessment in terms of the fact that, one, there would be rationalization of GST on certain aspects. Slabs is one aspect, and definitely taking into account different or simplification in terms of the fact that broader categories remain same, and GST rates, they are also rationalized to the possible extent. I will not right now I'll not be in a position to right now make a mention about certain commodities. There is a list of commodities which has been mentioned as a result of different researches, in fact. So all of us remain sufficiently aware about those item categories also, and there should not be any artificiality in terms of salted or sugar coated, something like that. I hope all of us understand those aspects very well. That's one thing. Secondly, see, even if you give all these panelists a task of thinking in terms of where from the rupee comes and how it is spent over different items, we would have our own priorities, our own set of priorities, and that would be subject to another debate. Maybe What Professor Kundu would allocate, I may differ from that. What Dr. Vijay Kumar would be allocating, I might be certainly differing in my opinion on that. But see, the larger thrust of the things has to be seen, and that all of us have agreed almost that it is going in the right direction. As I said, point is that in India there is a larger belief as if spending is doing the things. I go a step forward. Spending is not exactly doing the things. You have to spend with efficiency and great amount of productivity, which I think needs to be embedded into the system in days to come, and that's not happening. This is where I would like, because 1 lakh or 1,20,000 crore rupees being invested in education, or nearly 1 lakh crore being spent on healthcare, unless we have an idea about that, what kind of efficiencies, what kind of outcomes are we expecting from that, unless that is made very, very clear, I definitely feel that this is where I would like to hear more from experts as well as the policy makers. And when they decided on objective parameters, in fact, this is where assessments have to be done. That's another thing. Increasing salary. Now we are entering the phase of 8th pay commission very shortly, and there'll be some after effects of that also. But again, those who would be beneficiaries of 8th pay commission, how would they be working on their skill levels, their productivities, and deliver better good for the society and their own selves also, maybe next generation. Right. And what was your third question?
So my third question was about the market liquidity. Is there an expectation
Well,
right in the month of
Navanita, point is very, very clear. Liquidity is not simply an outcome of reduction in repo rates. All of us understand, right? And it was long due that this call, and there was a lot of debate that inflation targeting has to be done. To what extent should we be going? What kind of flexibility? Banks also have certain leverages with them. We understand that also. And recently, before the rate cut, they went for that also, that they sometimes uh, through statutory liquidity ratio or cash reserve ratio also, they tend to increase the liquidity into the market. So the point is, the businesses should be sure in the country that if they intend to make use of increased liquidity or existing liquidity, whatever be the case, then they would definitely tend to increase their, let's say, net profit margins or gross profit margins or operational margins by dint of that reality. So if that appears to be happening, and that would depend upon the entire environment in the country or mood of the economy. So right now I feel that there have been certain steps which have been done with an idea to improve the mood of the market. I think is businesses take it well and they take it forward. Liquidity is not under question or has not been much of a problem, because there are various ways to improve or increase the liquidity into the market. But will businesses lift or take benefit of that increased possibilities of liquidity in the market? That remains a moot question before us, and that shall depend upon the overall, let's say, demand in the market and mood of the market, which I presently feel with the little more disposable income at the end of middle class or lower class or government spending into different sectors. I think that mood is seemingly there, and the business world should definitely gain from that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your views. So I would now wish to hear from Dr. Vijay Kumar, sir. Sir, as we have seen the propensity to consume and propensity to save, these are the two most coveted segments of the world or in the line of economics. Now, with these increased income in the hands of the people, do you feel there would be a tendency for people to come forward in the stock market? And that is one question I was having in mind. And more so, the budget has also widened with regard to the entry of the foreign direct investment, or will it going to pump up in a different way as of the stock market levels are concerned? So can you throw some light on these trading matters?
Well, this is a point of very serious discussion in financial circles now. What percentage of the income saved by the income taxpayers will go into consumption, and what percentage will go into savings and investment? And that is the part that will be coming to the stock market. Now, we don't have a clear idea of what percentage will be going towards consumption and what percentage will be going towards saving. That remains to be seen. But then I can tell you a couple of things. Number one, out of the increased savings which the middle class will be making as a result of this reduction in the tax slabs, and with 1 lakh income a month getting exempted from personal income taxation. Certainly the additional income, the disposable income, will be spent not on food items. That is very, very clear. It will not be spent on food items. It will not be spent on fast-moving consumer goods. It will be spent on consumer discretionary, like automobiles, cars, upgradation of cars, two-wheelers, jewelry, things like that, air conditioners, washing machines, these kind of white goods. A part of the money will be going certainly towards that. And of course, a part will be going towards savings. And our chief economic advisor has been a little bit concerned about the financialization of savings that has been happening in the economy after the 2020 COVID crash. The stock market crashed when the COVID broke out, and the Nifty touched 7,511. That was a low point of Nifty in March 2020. After that crash, we saw almost a one-sided rally in the stock market, with Nifty tripling within 4 years from 7,511 to 26,277 in September 2024. So these are fantastic returns. Benchmark tripling in 4 years' time. And that too, the mid and small cap stocks. I'm talking Nifty is a large cap index, India's main index along with Sensex. But mid cap stocks are the stocks with which come in the market capitalization category, 101 to 250. And from 251 and above in market cap come under the small caps. So the mid and small cap segments have done exceedingly well, and they have given fantastic returns to investors, particularly to the first-time investors who entered the market after the COVID crash. And because of this great returns which the new investors, the newbies who entered the market, because of this, the number of demat accounts in the stock market have exploded. The total number of demat accounts in April 2020, immediately after COVID crash, that was 4.09 crores. Now it is about 18 crores. And the monthly SIP, systematic investment plans, that is one area about which I am really happy about, because that is very healthy investment. And the systematic investment plan book, SIP book, has been clocking about 25,000 crores in the last 3 months. So more and more money is coming through the systematic investment plan route or the mutual funds. And the last 12 years, we have seen the AUM of the mutual fund industry multiplying by more than 8 times. These are unprecedented things that has not happened in the past. So since the stock market is doing well, I expect a part of the money to go into savings. That is the savings part. And your question regarding FDI, of course, FDI has picked up in the last 3 months. It has been not been impressive, but then in the last 3 months, FDI has picked up. From the stock market perspective, more important than FDI is FPI, foreign portfolio investment. And foreign portfolio investors have been selling in Indian market after the peaking of the Nifty in September. As I said, Nifty peaked at 26,277. After that, foreign portfolio investors have been consistently selling the market, and there are two reasons for that. The Trump trade has made a big difference to the dollar index. I've never seen the dollar index going up by 10% within a short period of time. It was around 100. Now the dollar index moved to 110 because the Trump trade was massive. A lot of money moved not only from emerging markets like India, but also from developed markets like Japan, and also from the European markets to US, because the US has been exceptionally strong. The US economy has been surprisingly resilient, and what is known as the Magnificent Seven. The Magnificent Seven stocks, the Meta, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Tesla. These are the high-tech magnificent stocks. And the market cap of these Magnificent Seven stocks is $18 trillion now. It is more than 3 times the market cap of India. And therefore, the capacity of these Magnificent Seven stocks to attract a lot of money is very huge. And that is the reason why we are seeing an erosion in foreign portfolio investments. But I expect the FPIs to come back to India because India has the best terminal value. No other country has a growth potential which India has for the next several years, and all of us are agreed on that. So that will bring the foreign portfolio investors back to India. But then for that to happen, you need 2 conditions. Number one, the dollar index has to come down a little bit. The US bond yields, the 10-year US bond yield is, in my opinion, perhaps the most important indicator as far as the global markets are concerned. And the differential between the US bond yields and the Indian bond yields have narrowed to less than 2%, which has not happened in the recent past. And if these 2 macro indicators start coming down, foreign portfolio investors will be coming back to India because India presents the best growth story among the large economies of the world for the next 20-25 years. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. So it was really overwhelming, answers to the question. Thank you so much for sharing your inputs. For the third round, the last panelist, Sangeeta ma'am, I would like to know, I was having that question in mind, but then I thought, okay, I'll just ask in the round 3 itself. So, ma'am, in this particular budget, if we look into almost, it's seen that 80% of the women, they are also involved in agriculture, as we are talking about the gender issues and all. But unfortunately, close to 14%, like 13.9%, if we pick up the exact mathematics and statistics, they are the landowners. And there are certain agri schemes like Krishonati Yojana and all that. They are not having the dedicated provisions for women. So India, being a primarily an agricultural country, and women entrepreneurship increased with the blessings of Mohammed Yunus from Bangladesh. So right now, what should be the mechanism, or what do you feel as an academician, if at all given a chance and you can suggest to the speaker house? So what would you be suggesting them, that what can make women much more proficient into this agricultural belt? Because this is a pathetic story that only close to even less than 15%, they are the landowners, but close to 80% of the women are into this agricultural task force. Any ideas from your side, ma'am?
Yeah, that's
Over to you.
exactly what I was pointing out. Even if you look at the Krishi Unnati Yojana also, it is in part B of the gender budgeting. And as you rightly pointed out, and in fact, we were doing research, there was something called agroecology, which is sustainable agriculture, basically. And that, again, it was portrayed that it is led by women and all, but it was only increasing the, work of women, the unpaid work, because it is considered as an extension of the work that they are doing. So the problem is that one is that you have to address it, you have to acknowledge that there's a problem, and you have to address it. And the problem over here is that many a times we don't acknowledge, and that is why we don't address it. So in terms of landowners, it is close to 13.9%. If you look at even at the Prime Minister Awas Yojana, which is 100%, but only 73% of the women, it's registered under women. So what is required basically, it's, we talk about at the central level, but maybe at the state level, we have to take actions, right? So in terms of allocating, if not allocating land, what is required is that their work being recognized, they are being paid, they are being supported with some sort of loan, so that they can set up some enterprises. If they continue to agriculture, if they want to do some agro-based enterprise, they are given support. They are given education to understand about their own, what is about their own rights. I think those are the things, those are the basic things. If it's done, that will probably change the scenario. And also acknowledging the fact that this is a work like agroecology, like this is a study that we are doing, it is agroecology, and we're finding it that it's being hailed as it is led by women, but basically it is increasing the workload of women in the agricultural sector. So a couple of things. One, of course, education is very important, so that they become educated, they become aware of their rights. Many a times they are not aware of their rights. Second is that in governmental support, in terms of loan, if they want to set up any enterprise, agro-based enterprise. Third is that it's a state level, I think they should be encouraged to invest more in this gender specific policies in the agricultural sector.
Thank you, ma'am. So I have taken the views almost as of the Decoding Union Budget 2025 is concerned from all our esteemed speakers. I have one last question, and it is commonly thrown to any one of you, or more than one of the speaker can comment on this. So since Paris Agreement, we are talking about 2 degrees centigrade carbon emission. And to do that, a lot of investment is evidently required in terms of making people aware, as of making things green, and climatic awareness should be created, else there will be a complete devastation. So is it possible, I want to know from any or all of the speakers, like, can we reach at this level of carbon emission at 2 degrees centigrade, what we are looking for or expecting, to have semi-carbon free country, which is very difficult with 1.42 or 1.45 population strength. So this is a promise which is being made by the country, or this is a promise which people around the world are struggling for. We cannot be definitely the absolutely zero carbon one, like what Bhutan is all about. So looking at the population strength and looking at the promise. So what is that twist, or what is that crucial for us to look into, and how can we make it? Any inputs from any of the speakers? It's an open house question.
The biggest threat to that is Donald Trump, because his policy is drill, baby, drill, going back on carbon emissions and greener energy. But India should stick to its goals.
Thank you, sir. Any other inputs on, any inputs from any one of your side on this climatic awareness?
Taking the point that Dr. Vijay Kumar made, the American president often says that our lifestyle is not negotiable at an international platform. And that is the arrogance which has come in many of the developed countries. As far as the developing countries are concerned, we have equal responsibility, but differentiated because of our high deficit in many other SDGs. But here also, we are finding it very difficult in India to contain the growth of consumer durables, which have high emission content, because we want to promote growth. So the consumption pattern is not really responding in a manner that we are taking the facilities to the poorer sections. Given that, I think what is important, and I think UN is concerned about it, is improving the resource efficiency and having circular economy, which really means that you don't discard the product after the first use. You design the product in such a manner that it can go for the second use, and you use the resource extracted from nature as much as possible, so that finally the ultimate residual, after 4 or 5 times of use, reuse, and recycling, I think that is extremely important, which is coming up, and it's a big pressure coming from the UN system. We're doing a major project on this urban mining, picking up the used products in the urban areas and putting it to reuse and recycling instead of just dumping it or just burning it out and resulting in emissions. We should try to really do that, and I think India is concerned about it, about this recycling and making circular economy possible. That should be one great strategy.
Thank you so much, sir. So, as an academician, I personally feel that researchers today should come forward by making a good blend of circular economy and knowledge economy. Do you agree on this point?
I entirely am not 100%, 120%. Thank you.
Okay. So with this, we have almost reached the end of our today's insightful discussion. So thanking one and all present here, thanking from the bottom of my heart all the panel members for sharing their valuable inputs. So thanking exclusively is a mere mark of respect, but I would like to say the eloquence, the knowledge, the expertise, and the periphery of the visions that being shared in today's this August evening is absolutely going to have genuine takeaways for our personal, professional, as well as academic pursuit. So before I sign off, I would like to say that behind every successful nation, there needs a proper strategic vision. Thank you, one and all. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
and good night.